Most people associate the Luger pistol with the German Army in World War I and World War II, but a lot of other nations adopted the Parabellum, including the Dutch. Now, of course, the Luger begins with Hugo Borchardt, and the Borchardt pistol is made by Lowe. And this is really a seminal gun. This is the first firearm that has its magazine inside a pistol grip, and it has this unique toggle action. But the Borchardt, although beautifully made, didn't work all that well. And the problem was it was a very ungainly gun. So once Borchardt had kind of not been a success, it was up to George Luger, an Austrian-born engineer, to take the basic principles of the Borchardt and apply them to a gun that had better ergonomics.
The Luger drew on its design from the Borchardt and Georg Luger's designs that in actuality don't differ very much from the toggle design that you'll find in the Winchester model 1873 rifle. The way that the interior of that works in the 73 is inverted in a Luger. It's just the fact that it's firing semi-automatic and self-ejecting and self-loading that differs in the toggle style action of the Winchester and the Luger.
The Dutch were really at the forefront of pistol trials. When nations were looking to adopt their first self-loading firearms, the Dutch were right there. As a matter of fact, they entered into a series of trials that resulted in the selection of a Parabellum, of a Luger pistol. And over about a 6-year process, the Dutch went back and forth with DWM. The Dutch Army really wanted the Luger pistol. And by 1904, they were ready. The problem was the Dutch government didn't think so. So while the Dutch Army couldn't get the money it needed and continued to just issue double-action revolvers, there are other entities that were part of the Netherlands. And in particular, you had the Dutch East Indies with its own army. Now, it looked at the pistol that the Dutch Army wanted to adopt, and they too wanted some changes. And their gun ended up being the M11. And this is the gun that ended up serving in the Dutch East Indies. So while you have the colonial army armed with a brand new Luger, you have the Dutch Army still issuing a double-action revolver.
The Dutch were one of the very earliest adopters of the Luger pistol. The Dutch Navy were the ones who initiated procurement of a later gun that was basically indistinguishable from the P08. It did not have a grip safety. It did have an attachment for the shoulder stock. It had a short barrel. It was in 9 Parabellum. I mean, it was, for all intents and purposes, a pattern '08 German Luger. And the Navy adopted that. The Army did not. It's as though they weren't talking to each other. And of course, the Indies, they were completely of a separate mind entirely. They did what they wanted to do, including affixing these little brass tags. A Luger with a brass tag on it is always from the Dutch East Indies guns.
So the Dutch East Indies pistols, they continued to order guns after the First World War. Now, this is a period of the Weimar Republic. Deutsche Waffen Munition Fabriken is under the constraints imposed by the Versailles Treaty. And so the Dutch want to buy guns for the East Indies Army, but the Germans aren't allowed to do military contracts. So DWM had a long relationship with Vickers in England, and they arranged for the Dutch guns to be finished and assembled by Vickers. So you'll see in that 1920s period, East Indies Lugers that are Dutch Lugers actually made from German parts by the British.
The Dutch never bought large quantities of anything. And so the procurement would be stretched out for 10 years. During that period of time, the supplier went from DWM to a holding company that was picking up the carcass of DWM. And then later that holding company sold its interest to Mauser Oberndorf, so Mauser Oberndorf took over the delivery of these things. And of course, the markings changed as they went. And so for Luger collectors, it's a real bonanza. It's almost as though there's no two alike. There are, of course, but not many.